Welcome to Briefing Document. Here we will go over UFO stories and history. We will discuss the research into these events and you can decide if the stories are true or not, or need more details. Are you ready for this?
In the early morning hours of May 14th, 2008, something crashed on the embankment of the Colorado River just south of Needles, California. There's still speculation today as to what that was. UFO, UAV, ARV. That's the topic of today's briefing document. On May 14th, 2008, around 3 in the morning, a guy with the nickname Bob on the River was in his houseboat on the Colorado River at a marina in Topak, Arizona. While on the deck of his houseboat, he saw an oval-shaped object with somewhat of a turquoise glow fly overhead and then slam to the ground on the west side of the river, just north of where Bob was. He knew it was no meteor. He had seen those plenty of times. He thought a small plane had crashed. He grabbed his phone to call 911 but got no signal. He started to move his boat out into the river towards the crash site to try and get a signal. At about the same time, a resident in the Mojave Valley, Bullhead City, Arizona area, Frank Costigan, got up at 3 a.m. to let his cat out into the backyard. He noticed a large glowing object heading south, somewhat along the trajectory of the river. It was glowing turquoise, red, and green. He saw it heading towards the ground and waited to hear an impact sound. He reported it was heading southwest at a tremendous speed. Then it slowed down, then sped up again before heading towards the ground out of his sight. Now, Frank Costigan is a retired superintendent of operations and the police chief at Los Angeles International Airport, LAX. And then he went on to Ontario International Airport. And Bob had his boat moored here at the Topak Marina, south of Needles. And it was here that he saw the object crash into the riverbed. So he called 911, or tried calling 911, and he couldn't get a signal. So he moved his boat out into the river. Immediately after the crash, both Bob on the River and Frank Costigan reported approximately 5 military helicopters flying low over the Colorado River heading south. Once the helicopters got to the impact site, a sky crane appeared. Since no one had eyes on the crash site, it is assumed that at least one of the initial helicopters landed, and personnel put cabling around the object, and the sky crane hoisted it up and flew back north with the object still glowing, followed by the other helicopters. Others around the Laughlin, Nevada, Bullhead City, Arizona area reported that a few Janet airplanes were landing and taking off at the Laughlin Bullhead International Airport. A few hours after this incident, Frank Costigan went to his part-time workplace, KTOX Radio, in Needles, California. He did a few stories for the station now and again. Frank told the man who ran the station, David Hayes, what he had seen a few hours earlier. David Hayes had his own story. He told Frank that as he was driving on Interstate 40 heading towards the radio station, he saw a small convoy of military vehicles on the interstate. All had government license plates, and the lead vehicle looked to David Hayes like an SUV with a dome on top. On one of the truck beds, Hayes saw what he thought was a military drone, a triangular object that reminded Hayes of a stealth bomber. Hayes could see the men in the vehicles and they did not have uniforms on. Hayes made eye contact with the driver of a dark-colored van that was part of the convoy, and that van broke off from the convoy and followed Hayes to the radio station. The radio station's still here, still broadcasting. It's 2025. Now, right alongside, just past this telephone pole, would have been where the truck was doing surveillance on the radio station that day. But KTOX still here. As word started getting around Needles and the tri-state area, people started calling KTOX and reporting what they saw. The Janet planes, the strange military vehicles, and strangers in town asking questions about anyone who may have seen the crash or the object. Word eventually got to Las Vegas, about 100 miles north, and renowned reporter George Knapp heard the story and started investigating. He got his cameraman and they headed south to Needles to see what this was all about. Now, as for the reported Janet flights, at the time, and still today, the Laughlin Bullhead Airport Tower closes at 6 p.m. and reopens at 6 a.m. So there was no one in the control tower during this incident. Planes can still land and take off, but pilots are on visual operation. So there is no one at the airport who can officially confirm the Janet flights. And with the marina down there, Bob would have pulled his boat out into the river here, heading north towards the town of Needles. And the object crashed south of Needles on the California side of the river, and about 100 yards off the edge of the river. But all the riverbank is basically full of these trees and shrubs.
Somewhere in this rough terrain, just west of the Colorado River and south of Needles, is a point of impact, maybe some burn marks, created by something that fell from the sky. Frank Costigan saw it because he got up at 3 in the morning to let his cat out, a fiery object that flashed across the sky. But it wasn't a meteor, he says.
Up in the sky, it's just bright. It was bright enough that it illuminated the ground.
For 7 years, Costigan worked as the chief of airport security at LAX. He says the mystery object flew out of the northeast heading southwest, traveling very fast. But at one point it slowed down, then sped up again.
And it went behind a hill, and I waited to see if I could hear it crash, because as big as it was bound to make noise.
But he didn't hear a crash.
I was coming into work.
Hours later, David Hayes, the owner of KTOX Radio in Needles, was coming to work when he spotted an odd formation of dark vehicles driving off the highway. He drew a picture of the lead vehicle, a large truck with a dome on top and a black structure that reminded him of a stealth fighter.
It seemed like it was some kind of surveillance vehicle, but four-wheel drive, and it had government plates, the U.S. government plates on it. And behind it was a couple of vans that were, they looked like support vehicles.
The men inside had military bearings, Hayes said, but weren't in uniform. He made eye contact with one of the drivers and the guy followed him. Later in the day, one of the vehicles was parked outside his station, seemingly conducting a surveillance of the place.
You see these guys and they're staring you down. It's sort of a Men in Black sort of a feel to it?
Absolutely. Very serious, serious as a heart attack. There were people here the next day, almost like a team. It seemed like that they were doing either some sort of cleanup or whatever. The point is that something definitely happened.
A trio of yapping dogs, excited about something outside their Bullhead City home, is what caused Tutu Martin and her husband Paul to awaken just after 3 in the morning last May 14th.
And the whole bedroom lit up, like they had Klieg lights on it. So pushed the blinds back and looked.
The glowing object blazed across the sky in a southwest direction and appeared to slow down, then speed up. Minutes later, Martin says, she saw and heard a formation of helicopters as it sped south past the Laughlin skyline.
They were definitely right above the river, heading south. About another 20 minutes or so, they were coming back.
The fisherman, who uses the nickname Bob on the river, told us what he'd seen.
It didn't look like a meteor. I've seen meteors before. It looked like a plane crash.
Pointing the exact spot is difficult because he'd been floating downriver for a few hours in the middle of the night when it happened.
That's when I saw the bright turquoise, blue, green flame, and it was coming directly straight down out of the sky.
Within minutes, helicopters arrived and hauled the object away. The FAA told us it does not retain records of what might have been in the air over the river, but the I-team obtained a single transponder reading from the morning of May 14th, confirming the presence of at least one military chopper. We also found a detachment of the Special Ops Group known as the Night Stalkers at the Henderson Airport during the same time frame. But it isn't the helicopters that have spooked Bob and other residents of the area. Rather, it's the X-Men.
There's been some strange people in town.
Needles radio station employee Paul Fick saw the mystery men and their blacked-out vehicles starting the morning after the UFO crash.
But there was a truck parked down here at the end of the street, pretty much pointed at the tower behind the station. And it was one of the four-wheel drive trucks with the shell on the back that had like the bumps, radar domes, things like that. And same thing Dave saw, one of the guys, the guys that are sitting there with the sunglasses on, very stiff.
I was there when the phone call came in from River Bob.
Political organizer Tony Fagan had a face-to-face with the mystery men. The day after Bob called the radio station, Fagan was grilled by a stranger who showed up at one of her political meetings.
This gentleman came over and shook hands. He said that his name was Phil, and that he understood that I was at the radio show when all of the calls were coming in about River Bob. And did I know what had hit the water? Did I know how big it was? Did I know what color it was? And he got very frustrated when I said that I really wasn't paying attention. That
the visitor had told Tony he wanted to join the party, but after the meeting, quizzed her again about the UFO.
This guy was very crisp, kind of a military-like haircut, way too clean cut, just way too clean cut for our group.
Would the government send agents to ask questions about, say, a secret project that got out of bounds? Yes, says former intelligence colonel John Alexander.
If you're in counterintelligence and you want to protect technology, one of the things you want to know is what's out there. So asking questions of people, like what did you see, gives them a pretty good feel for, how much protection? Do we have to go and clean this up? Do we need a cover story?
In Bullhead City, Brad Allen watched the aerial procession with his son.
I looked through the binoculars, and below one of them was a green object. It wasn't glowing, it was just faint green.
Tutu Martin saw the same armada. An hour or so later, she says the Laughlin Airport, located just below her home, was invaded by several 737s, which were identical to the famed Janet planes used to transport workers from Las Vegas to the Area 51 military base.
And it was white with the red stripe.
Area residents encountered members of what was described as a cleanup team in the weeks after the crash.
There was a cleanup crew that were dining out at Topak Marina on occasion after the thing had been removed and people were hunting for the spot.
Even if this is the spot, we still don't know what hit the ground. Retired intelligence colonel John Alexander speculates it could be any number of high-tech UAVs, unmanned spy planes being developed at several Western test ranges.
Vehicle pitch program has begun.
Last month, a classified object was launched into space by the Air Force. The Pentagon has confirmed it's the X-37B space plane, an unmanned spy plane, sort of the military's version of the space shuttle. A few images of the X-37 have been made public. The military acknowledges these craft have been test flown at Edwards and Vandenberg, not too far from Needles. The shape and size are a near perfect match for what the witnesses say they saw. Does that look like what came out of the sky?
Without the horizontal surfaces, yes.
Without these little wings.
Without the wings.
This matches the dimensions that I told you. The width versus length.
The I-team sent records requests to numerous agencies, and none were able to shed light on what the Needles object might have been. The Air Force won't say much about the mission of the X-37, but military analysts have some guesses.
What they say is that they're going to use it for testing of technologies, space technologies. Possibly it's a space maneuver vehicle that could duck back into the atmosphere and change its orbit so that next time it flew over China, the Chinese wouldn't expect it to be coming.
Another military analyst who speaks with us occasionally but only anonymously says he guesses it could be part of a weapons program known as the Rods from the Gods, which we know has been tested out at Area 51. These are space-based kinetic weapons that literally fall out of the sky and cause problems for the bad guys. But for now, the best guess of the witnesses is the X-37. We, of course, have aired several stories about the Needles crash, and you can see them all online. If you care to watch the story as it unfolded from the beginning.
All right, thank you.
Also, George Knapp and his team called police agencies in 3 states, the FAA, and various military bases to inquire about the crash. All claimed they knew nothing about the crash at all. George Knapp did a couple follow-ups on this story in the years after, but no new information was found. Now, to this day, there's still a lot of speculation about what it was that crashed here. UFO, UAV, ARV. People are still talking about it. One thing's for certain, the military has never made a comment about what it was that happened here. But they were here, definitely.
Thank you for watching this episode of Briefing Document. Please hit the like button and consider subscribing to our channel, as it really helps. We will be discussing more stories in history, and we welcome your input. There is much ahead.